On the agenda tonight, we're going back to 1958. We're going to be taking a look at Bill Haley and his Comets, and they're going to be performing Rock Around the Clock. Hello, Phil here from Wings of Pegasus, and welcome to another analysis video. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe. So we're going to get Bill and his Comets up on screen. We'll watch it the whole way through as well, because it is just over 2 minutes in length, the whole performance, and then we'll get into the analysis afterwards.
We're gonna rock around the clock, huh? 1, 2, 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock, rock. 5, 6, 7 o'clock, 8 o'clock, rock. 9, 10, 11 o'clock, 12 o'clock, rock. We're gonna rock around the clock tonight. Put your glad rags on, join behind me. We'll have some fun when the clock strikes 1. We're gonna rock around the clock tonight. We're gonna rock, rock, rock till broad daylight. We're gonna rock around the clock tonight. Now when the clock strikes 2, 3, and 4, if the band slows down, we'll yell for more. We're gonna rock around the clock tonight. We're gonna rock, rock, rock till broad daylight. We're gonna rock around the clock tonight. Chimes ring 5, 6, and 7. We'll be right in 7th heaven. We're gonna rock around the clock tonight. We're gonna rock, rock, rock till broad daylight. We're gonna rock around the clock tonight. Now when it's 8, 9, 10, 11, 2, I'll be going strong, and so will you. We're gonna rock around the clock tonight. We're gonna rock, rock, rock till broad daylight. We're gonna rock around the clock tonight. Clock strikes 12, we'll cool off and start rocking around the clock again. We're gonna rock around the clock tonight. We're gonna rock, rock, rock till broad daylight. We're gonna rock around the clock tonight. Well, that's all.
And there we have it. As always, the link to this video is going to be in the description below, so you can watch the whole video if you want to, because it is a half-an-hour performance, about 27 minutes, as you can see on the screen, and there's lots of other songs in there. But jumping into this one, we can look at this from so many different angles, because we are going to dive into that little guitar solo in there, because there was so much technique, and you could break that down for years, but we'll have a go at looking through it. Also, this video was suggested and requested because somebody was asking if Bill faked playing the guitar. It was one of those videos, and just to clear that up, Bill started playing guitar at a very young age. His mum was a classically trained pianist. His dad was a banjo player and mandolin player, so he made a guitar himself out of cardboard to play along, or pretend to, with his mum and dad, so they bought him a real guitar. So he had been playing a long time, but I think the reason people might think that he pretended to play the guitar is because of the way that he played, which maybe I'll demonstrate to show you guys how, when you've played for a long time and you know what you're doing, sometimes it does look like you're not really playing. So I have seen a few videos of Bill playing, and the way that he plays his bar chords is with the thumb over the top, and is probably the most efficient way of playing your bar chords, especially for your wrist and avoiding injuries. But because it just looks like you're grabbing the guitar, it means that people might think that you're not actually playing, because it just looks like you're holding it and moving it around and not necessarily holding down any strings, but that's what Bill's doing. And also, I have seen him playing in E, for example, with the blues. You'll have E, and then you'll have A, where he moves up, and then goes back down to E, and then he comes all the way up to B, like that. In this case, we're in A, and when you're playing the blues in A, especially when you're playing the rhythm down at the bottom of the guitar, you can flip over to your D chord, like that, using that same bar with the first finger, just placing in your second finger, And now I've moved down to my E, only playing the 5th, but using that same bar. And you can go as far as the octave if you want, but if you go further than that and you hit the G, then you'll get the sus4 sound, which you don't really want. So having this means that it looks like I'm not really doing much, but I am getting all the 3 chords there of that blues progression. When people who don't play the guitar pretend to play the guitar, they approach the neck and just move their fingers around a lot, but a really telling thing is that they are pretending to play in the most natural way possible, i.e. the angle of the wrist. They're not going and starting to do like this and making a really severe angle with their wrist. They're just playing or pretending to play the most natural way, which is when you start to advance and be able to play with the thumb over the top and supply your root notes with that thumb, it'll look like you're not really playing. And I'm sure a lot of people who don't play the guitar, who watch great guitar players, will see it as almost like they're not really doing anything. They might be playing some super fast runs, alternate picking, but it doesn't look like a lot's happening. And it's because of that. It is so natural. It's so ingrained and so well rehearsed. Just while I've got the guitar out, I'll show you guys the chords. We're in A here, so our blues progression is going to be A, D, and E. And you might want to throw the 7th in there as well. So starting with your standard bar chord, take off your little finger, and it'll allow that D string to ring out. That's your 7th. If you're playing the chord down at the bottom, then the G is the one that's going to be the 7th there. Just allow that to ring out. And we've got this rhythm that's got the swing in there as well. And rhythm-wise with the guitar, we're just stabbing in, and you might see in the background the guitar starts off with, but then transitions into all upstrokes, just to keep that groove in there. By the way, there, I didn't go to a D, there on your guitar, I went to the D 9th chord, which is a bit more jazzy sounding, and I believe that's what they're going to in this performance. If you want to play that, you might see it played one of 2 ways. Either the way that I'm playing it, which you'll see probably most commonly with jazz players and people who've been playing for a long time. You can also see it fretted with each finger. So that we're going, first finger is on that 5th fret of the A string, and then we miss out the D string, and then you're placing your 2nd finger on the 5th fret of the G, 3rd finger, 5th fret of the B, and the little finger, 5th fret of the high E string. And you get that sound. The only thing about fretting it in this manner, with all of your fingers on the same fret, you miss out that 3rd of our chord, which I personally like the sound of, so I would just prefer to play it musically like that anyway. Obviously we've got the whole band set up here, so the sound is going to be pretty well filled in. If it was a little bit more stripped back, I'd probably tend to go for the downstrokes, because then you can start to apply those muted strums. So if we're going, you can see how you start to get a little bit of swing in your rhythm playing, as well as getting the so you can hear a little bit of that strumming going on between the chords. Some other things that we've got here performance-wise, it is actually a 7-piece band on stage, and with Bill providing that rhythm guitar, that's why it's not as important to get in all of those percussive strikes and muted strums. But when we get into the saxophone solo as well, we've got that choreography, which you might not spot, but they're all leaning in on those accents. Another thing you might not have noticed, but you can hear it on the mic, is When Bill comes back in with his vocal, the microphone drops down, so the mic stand breaks and falls down, but he just keeps on going, doesn't miss a beat, and it is such a solid performance, considering as well that the tempo is being pushed here compared to that original record. We also have the count in from Bill at the beginning of the song, so it might have been the case that he counted in a little bit faster than normal, or it is something that they would do live, just increase the tempo ever so slightly, and that is understandable because it'll put a little bit more energy into the performance, which is more often than not what you want to have live. And when we also start to look at the guitar solo in this performance, we can take that into consideration that the tempo is being pushed. So it means that all of this alternate picking has to be completed so much faster and more accurately than on that original record. But let's jump into this solo because it might have been something that flew under the radar in the late 50s with all of this technique with the alternate picking going on because of the length of the solo. It is so short that it comes and goes really quickly within the composition. But we'll have a look at it. I'm just going to be playing roughly what's going on in this live performance, not on the original record. If I was teaching this, I'd slow it down, make sure that all of the notes are exactly right, but we'll busk through it and we'll just cover the techniques. So straight off the bat, we are into the solo with the alternate picking. And it sounds like we are being a little bit loose with the alternate picking, but throwing in the emphasis of and when you start to throw in all of that alternate picking, then you're just placing in the accents of those notes at the right time, obviously with that picking going on the whole time. So it probably works out as if you're trying to learn it pick by pick. Jumping into the next phrase, now we've got some picking, a pre-bend as well. It sounds like, I haven't slowed this down, so I'm not sure if all of the notes are exactly right, but we've got this technique of doing the pre-bend. Actually, it starts with maybe a pick. As I said, I haven't slowed it down, but it might be a pick and then letting that note come down. It is difficult when I was listening through a minute ago to hear all of the notes in this because there might be a little bit of muting going on, but we've got like that. So trying to explain it, starting on your 7th fret of that high E string, doing the pre-bend, so we're bending up now and letting that note come down again like that. And then we're playing the 5th fret, high E string, so that's your A, and then coming over with the 2nd finger I'm using here to play that 7th fret of the B string. So we've got this, and that's the important bit right at the end. When I played my 7th fret on the B string, I then did an upstroke really quickly in order to follow on that next phrase. Again, really technical stuff, and we haven't really played anything. It is such a short solo, but there is so much technique in here. Just quickly, I forgot to put in the second half of the first part of the solo, which is just pedaling between our 7th fret and 8th fret on the B string, and keeping this alternate picking going the whole time, going like that. And slowing that down is going like that. So keeping that alternate picking going the whole time. So now we're into the 4th section of the solo. That's what I'm calling it. And so far we've got 4th section starts now, and we've got this, I think 4 picks on our 7th fret of the D string, which is an A if you want to know, but we're going, and we've got this little roll, this sweep pick across the strings from the D string to the high E string, just playing our A chord. And I'm not sure whether it is a muted sweep down or not, I can't remember, but we've got this kind of sound. So it means that when we get, I can't even remember the notes, but if we're That's the run. Once you put the phrasing in there, it always tends to help. So, breaking that down, it's a really jazzy, little bit bluesy, because we've got this and a little hammer on to that major at the end, which is something that I mentioned about having in the blues, the mix of the major and the minor keys. I said that in yesterday's video, but we've got this like that. That then moves us on to the final part of this solo, or at least the final technical part. We're on the 12th fret of our high E string, and we've got this, which is, and that's the 12th fret, 10th fret, and then 9th fret with your first finger, and then going back up, and again, alternate picking the whole time. So we've got that, kind of like that, and that's going to be just through twice very quickly. Like I said, that's pretty much what I can hear going on with the solo in this performance. And it is one of those that if you are going to rehearse it and practice it and try and play it live, it's a case of getting all of those segments up to speed and then just transitioning from one to the next. But the most important thing is getting each element down individually. I know that when I get the guitar out, the videos do tend to drag on a little bit longer than normal, but I do want to get into Bill's history a little bit. Something you'll notice about Bill is that he lost all function in that left eye, and this was due to, at the age of 4, having an inner ear mastoid operation that went wrong. They accidentally severed the optic nerve of that eye, and it has been said that he styled his hair with a curl over his right eye to try and draw the attention away from that damaged left eye. So his first performance was at school in 1938 when he was 13 years of age. Once he finished school, he went out on the road and played as much as possible. In the 1940s, he was known for his yodeling ability, and he was known as the Silver Yodeling Bill Haley. He was then a musical director at a radio station in Pennsylvania. That was for about 6 years, and he started recording in 1951. At this point, Bill and his band were known as Bill Haley Saddlemen, and in 1952 they changed to Bill Haley with Haley's Comets, and that was due to Bob Johnson, who was the radio station manager at the time where Bill had a 1-hour show. He suggested that name change. In 1953 is when they released Crazy Man Crazy, and that was a huge hit. It got to number 15 in the charts, and then at this point they changed their name to Bill Haley and his Comets. In 1954 is when they released Rock Around the Clock, and it was a huge hit. Got to number 23 in the charts. Interestingly, they re-released it a year later, and that time it got to number 1 in the charts. But also in 1954, they released their version of Shake, Rattle and Roll, and that was another massive hit. It did get to number 1. It was affiliated with the Blackboard Jungle movie in 1955, and from that point onwards, the industry changed musically from jazz into rock and roll, and it was a whole new wave, and very much that song was seen by many people as the start of rock and roll. This song, Rock Around the Clock, was massively popular in Europe, where in the UK and in Germany it sold over 1 million copies. He also had a huge hit with See You Later, Alligator, and in 1956 he starred in the first rock and roll musical film, and that was Rock Around the Clock, but also Don't Knock the Rock. It was also the first rock and roll act ever on the Ed Sullivan Show, and that was in 1955. But like I said earlier, this is getting right into Elvis territory now in the mid-50s and onwards. Elvis was younger and really took over the rock and roll sound and the whole industry pretty much. But we can see from this performance that Bill is still a massively popular act in 1958. It would be in 1960 that he got his star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame, and in 1987, after his death, he was inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, and the Comets were also inducted in 2012, and in 2017, he was inducted into the National Rhythm and Blues Hall of Fame. But it's great to have a look back at Bill Haley and his Comets live in 1958. but also to shine a light on Bill bringing in rock and roll in the early 50s, really laying the foundation for that future sound and the future sound of the industry into the 60s, but also to have a look at the killer guitar solo that is in this song and might fly under the radar until you pick up a guitar and try and play it yourself. But thank you guys so much for suggesting this video for me to take a look at, and keep those suggestions coming in the comments below. Let me know what you guys think, and if you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe, and I'll see you guys at the next one. Rock!